This is the assembly instructions for the UconX 8-strand fan-out kit assembly. Tools and hardware required for installation consist of the following items: a heat gun, an ideal handheld outer jacket stripper, Sharpie, you use a pen, scissors or some hand cutters, MTP to MTP subassembly, a fan-out kit tool, an 8-strand fan-out kit with hardware, and a ruler. First step is to take your subassembly, the MTP to MTP subassembly, and cut it to the length required. I have already pre-cut our subassembly to 2 meters in length. We are then going to load the male housing over the end of the cable and pull it back enough length to cover your 24 inches. We are then going to load the 1/4 inch heat shrink down to the male housing. We're going to mark the jacket to the length we needed that's required. Note, when marking the MTP subassembly, remember that the total cut length must include the connector manufacturer's termination strip length. It's always better to be a little longer than shorter. You can always cut the 250 micron fibers to termination strip lengths after fibers are installed through the fan-out kit. So what I'm going to do is cut this, or actually mark and strip the jacket for what I need at 29.5 inches. So I'm just placing a small mark on the outer jacket, as you can see here at the required length for my fan-out kit installation. I will then take my ideal stripper and just score the outer jacket. You'll have to make some adjustments to those blades. Be sure not to nick any yarn and or fibers. That should break away. Remove the outer jacket, exposing the aramid yarn and fibers. Go ahead and segregate the aramid yarn from the 250 micron buffers. Once you have the yarn separated from the fibers, because this is a 12-strand subassembly, I must remove the following colors, which is going to be red, black, slate, and gray, all the way down to where they protrude past the jacket. And I'm looking for my slate. So just to go over those colors, it's going to be my slate, red, black, and gray. You're going to take those fibers and just cut them towards the bottom of the jacket and remove them. Next, what we're going to do is we're going to fold our yarn back and cut it to 0.9 of an inch. So what I usually do is just take it down to the ruler use my thumb, hold it in place, fold it back, separate the fibers, and cut. So now that we have the yarn cut down and we have removed the fibers in which we are not using, that leaves us with 8 total fibers. We are going to take our 1/8 heat shrink, go down to the end of all of our fibers and load it over all 8 fibers. And move it all the way down to where the yarn is separated from the fibers. At this point, we're going to take the heat shrink and pull it over the yarn to hold it in place. What this will do is help support the tensile strength from the fan out kit to the MTP connector. So using the heat gun, we're going to heat shrink the 1/8. Be sure to check your temperature of your heat gun so that you don't mount the jacket, the outer jacket. So you want to make sure you're keeping a good temperature. For this particular heat gun, I've got it set at 340 degrees. You want to continue to rotate the heat shrink over the heat gun. Do not leave it in the same place for a long period of time. You'll notice how you can see the adhesive, that it's sticking down to the jacket and adhering to the aramid yarn. Now we're going to take the 1/4 inch heat shrink that we loaded in the beginning, take the aramid yarn and fold it over the 1/8 heat shrink, hold it in place, and heat shrink it. Same process. Be sure to continue to rotate the heat shrink over the heat gun. Now that we have the heat shrink holding the strength members, the yarn, in place, we're going to slide the male housing over the heat shrink. Let this cool for just a few seconds to make sure that we're not sliding any of the heat shrink forward. Once the heat shrink is cooled, slide the male housing forward over the heat shrink as shown. Next, we're going to load our stopping, or it's our stopper, over the fibers. You want to make sure to pay attention to the orientation. You could see the slots are up to the top. This end would go over first. Continue to pull that down. And we're going to leave that just hanging out for just a minute while we load our fan out kit tool. So you'll see here where it has a hole, so you could also slide the fibers through. Once again, you're going to grab all your fibers, load all the fibers through the tool in this orientation. Continue to slide that down. With the male housing going forward and the stopper going into and being inserted, engage your tool with the stopper and start to screw it in place. This is literally just a snug finger, real mild tightness, so that way the housing no longer moves and there's no wiggle room. That is sufficient. Now you could remove the fan out kit tool from the fibers, and we are ready to start the installation process of the fan out kit. Now that we've completed the installation of the male housing, we're going to start the fan out kit prep process. So for this illustration, we will be loading our connector boots and crimp sleeves over the furcation tube. You could slide these boots back as far as you need to be able to access the ends of the furcation tube. Now that the boots are loaded, we will then load and install our crimp sleeves. Once they're all installed, go ahead and pull all of them all the way down to the boots, so that way you can access the ends of the furcation tube without them falling off. So for this particular connector manufacturer, they require a 0.3 of an inch jacket strip length to expose the yarn. Using my ideal outer jacket stripper with a backstop, I will begin to remove 0.3 of the outer jacket of each one of the strands. Okay, this is just really to identify the manufacturing termination instructions for the appropriate aramid yarn length. Be sure that your tool and the blade is set up where you're not nicking any of the aramid yarn. We need those strength members for tensile strength. As you can see, I'm just scoring the jacket and then twisting to pull off to ensure that I have not nicked any of the yarn. Next, using your scissors or cutters, you want to pull the aramid yarn to one side, exposing the clear central tube. Take your cutters and trim the central tube flush with the jacket. So failure to cut the tube, the central tube, flush will create a gap when the connector has to slide down over the fibers. Make sure you get all that yarn pulled aside before cutting. Okay. Now that we have completed this process, that concludes the prepping for the fan out kit, and we could start to install our 250 micron fibers into the fan out kit. Okay, so now we're ready to take our 250 micron fibers and insert them into the central tubes of the fan out kit. The most important part during the installation process is making sure you have proper segregation, and you want to make sure there's no twisting or kinking of the 250 micron fibers coming through the male housing. You also want to make sure that as you insert them, that the locking tabs line up with the female locking window. So what that means is try to take them and align them in this position and keep them at the most within a quarter turn right to left, no more, to avoid any twisting or kinking of the fibers during this process. So I'm just going to take my fibers and extend them all the way to the right side. And I'm going to just look into the male to to make sure that I'm grabbing one individual fiber at a time and segregating it from the rest of them. Once again, with my locking window up towards me with minimal turning, I'm going to pick any empty central tube to insert the fiber. I'll explain later in the video how to keep track of each one of the fiber channels by color. So as you can see, I'm maintaining my window, I'm maintaining my locking mechanisms on my male housing. I'm going to set that down. Same concept, grab the next fiber, pull it, make sure it's segregated without any twisting around the other ones, and insert it into an empty central tube. Just want to repeat this process for all 8 fibers. Proper segregation, minimal twisting, and inserting. I'm going to kind of bend this forward so you could see the installation process. The other thing you could use is good magnification. If you have bad eyes like me, it's not a bad idea. Once again, I'm making sure that I'm completely segregating. There's no kinking going on or twisting. As you can see here, I'm just doing a real slight twist to the left to access the central tube I want to insert my fiber into. All right, 3 more to go. The other thing when you're installing, if you just kind of hold the fiber lightly, and that if it does give you a little bit of bend, you're not actually kinking it, you're going to be okay. It's actually pretty durable inside the 250 micron coating. As you notice, I still got my keyhole, my locking tab in the upright position. I've done very small movements back and forth with that. Last fiber. Okay, once you have all the fibers in place, you want to start grabbing them towards the end of the fan out kit. Okay, you want to just slowly, about a 1/4 inch, maybe an inch distance, moving them all in towards the male housing. Once you've got it there in that place, it should automatically push the fibers through. You're then able to take and line up your male locking tabs with your window and then snap the housing in place. As you can see now, all of my fibers have been installed through all the central tubes and are now exposed on the other end. This is typically where most people will take labels and label each one of these fibers to identify them within the termination process. This concludes our video for the installation of the fibers into the fan out kit.